Welcome to Narayana IAS Academy. This is Sureka Bhaskar presenting to you the daily news analysis. So for today's discussion, we have picked up a number of articles from The Hindu and the Indian Express which are both important and relevant for the UPSC CSE examination. Now let us have a look at the topics one by one. The first article for the day has been picked up from page number 14 of The Hindu. EC, that is the Election Commission, receives 11 requests for EVM verification. So this particular article discusses about the Election Commission of India having received a number of requests for the verification of the burnt memory or the microchips of the EVMs that have been used in the recent elections in certain constituencies. So over here, we'll be discussing about what are these electronic voting machines as well as the VVPATs, their advantages as well as the significance, and what are certain directives that have been given by the Supreme Court to the Election Commission of India in order to conduct free and fair elections. The second article has been picked up from page number 18 of the Indian Express, Engaging China in Modi 3.0. So this particular article delves into the major geopolitical challenges facing India, specifically seen in the light of the new government having resumed for its third term. So the 5 major challenges for India actually includes: number 1 is greater power rivalry, number 2 is the domestic economic transformation, number 3 is geo-economic position, next is changing global economy, and the last one is nothing but the material interest over ideology. The third article has been picked up from page number 18 of the Indian Express, HOOCH. So this particular article discusses about the significant number of deaths that have actually occurred in the Kallakurichi municipality of Tamil Nadu after people have consumed the spurious liquor, also called as HOOCH. So here we'll be discussing about what is this HOOCH, what are the methods of production, how it poses risks to the human body, as well as the different methods adopted for its treatment. The fourth article has been picked up from the science section of The Hindu. Sickle cell patients need urgent access to modern medication. So this particular article will be discussing about how sickle cell disease actually poses a formidable challenge to the global health landscape, and also with respect to India, how it actually affects the tribal population more compared to that of the rest of the population. So it is important for us to discuss about what is the sickle cell disease, the causes, the symptoms, the treatment, as well as the government initiatives to tackle the same. The last article for the day has been picked up from page number 15 of The Hindu. Mirae Assets unveil new age automotive ETF. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about India's first exchange traded fund for the electric vehicles. So the takeaway from this particular article is about the exchange traded fund for the preliminary examination. And towards the end of the session, we'll be solving few prelims as well as the mains practice questions. And now let us get into the discussion. The first article for the day that we'll be discussing is Election Commission receives 11 requests for EVM memory verification. So this particular article is actually talking about a number of applications that the Election Commission of India has been receiving regarding the verification of the burnt memory or the microchips of the EVMs that have been used in the recently held elections in certain constituencies. So in this particular article, our takeaway for the examination, specifically for the mains, is what are these EVMs and the VVPATs, what are their advantages, and what have been the recent Supreme Court ruling on going back to the paper ballot system, and the directions issued by the Supreme Court of India to the Election Commission in order to conduct free and fair elections in the country. So in this article, we'll be discussing about EVM, VVPATs, and elections is actually the topic, and we can actually map this particular topic to GS paper 2 for the mains examination, specifically to salient features of Representation of People's Act. So moving forward, there has been a mains question in the year 2018 in the light of recent controversies of the electronic voting machine. So now you know this particular topic is very, very important for the examination. Now moving to the topic, the Election Commission of India has received several applications for the verification of the burnt memory or the microchips of the EVMs used in the recent elections in few constituencies. Now moving on, let us understand what is the news about. The applications received are for the verification of tampering or the modification in the microcontroller chips that have been embedded inside this particular electronic voting machine. And this comes in the wake of the Supreme Court's recent rejection. That is, there has been a recent demand that was actually kept in front of the Supreme Court in order to return to the paper ballot system, anticipating or being apprehensive of the fact that there has been, tampering or modification with the microcontroller chips that are used in this EVM. Okay. So this comes because the Supreme Court's recent rejection of the demand for a return to the paper ballot system, although the court has permitted candidates who finish the second or the third in order to request for EVM verification on a limited scale. Moving forward, let us understand this particular concept of EVM and VVPATs. EVM stands for Electronic Voting Machine, where it is a device used to record the votes electronically. So each EVM consists of a ballot unit where the voter actually casts the vote and a control unit which stores and tallies the votes. And EVMs, that is, were first introduced in 1982 in the Paravur Assembly constituency of Kerala and has replaced ballot boxes since 1998. So what is ballot? It is a device used to cast votes in an election, and it may be either a piece of paper on which the voter's choice are actually marked. And by 2003, if you see, all the state elections and the by-elections actually embraced or they started using the EVMs. And in the landmark move in the year 2004 by the Election Commission of India, it mandated to use only the EVMs for the Lok Sabha elections thereon. Now, what are the advantage of this is it ensures faster vote counting, it reduces the human error, prevents the invalid votes and minimizes the risk of booth capturing by limiting the voting rate to 4 votes per minute. Now, moving on, looking at this particular infographic on how VVPAT machines actually work. So, when a voter presses a button in this electronic voting machine, a paper slip actually is printed through this particular VVPAT, okay? So, this slip actually contains the poll symbol, the name as well as the serial number of the candidate. And followed by this, it actually allows the voter to verify his or her choice, and after this, this is actually visible for a period of around 7 seconds and the ballot slip will be cut and dropped into the box and the beep will be heard. And VVPAT machines can be accessed by the polling officers only. Now moving forward, let us understand what is this VVPAT as we actually saw in the image itself. So VVPAT units are used alongside EVMs in order to enhance the transparency and voter confidence, and then they generate a paper slip for each vote that is actually cast, allowing the voters to verify because it actually stays for a period of 7 seconds being deposited into a sealed compartment, ensuring that the vote is recorded accurately. And this was first introduced in India in the 2014 Lok Sabha elections. Moving forward, let us quickly run through the advantages of the electronic voting machine as well as the advantages of VVPAT, okay? First is it is actually cost effective because it reduces the need for ballot paper, production, transportation, storage and the manpower associated for counting. Next is prevention of booth capturing that we already saw. Next is there is administrative efficiency because the entire process of election, okay, it is actually simplified for polling officers, speeding up the voting as well as counting. Next is there is time efficiency because it decreases the time required to conduct elections and announce the results. Next is advantages of VVPAT is that vote verification is actually done because it is actually staying there for 7 seconds so that we can cross verify. Next one, there is detection of frauds because it operates under a direct recording election system that helps in detecting the frauds and malfunctions. Next is there is enhanced transparency because we can actually view it. The next one is audit capability, that is it enables electoral authorities in order to conduct audits and verify the paper trail against the electronic record, ensuring vote accuracy as well as integrity. Moving forward, let us see what the Supreme Court has actually ruled, okay? So here the Supreme Court of India recently upheld the use of electronic voting machines, dismissing the pleas for a return to the ballot paper. And the court rejected a plea for 100% verification of VVPAT as well as the EVM counts as well. And the bench dismissed 3 major requests that include returning to the ballot paper system, providing the printed VVPAT slips to the voters for verification and counting, and next one, 100% counting of VVPAT slips along with the electronic counting. So all this is both time consuming and actually requires a lot of labor. So this is actually a wastage of a lot of resources from the exchequer. So despite these rejections, the court also mandated certain specific changes, okay? So what did they say? Here, the current observations with respect to EVMs by the Supreme Court is first is inadequate evidence to questioning the polling system. It said that based on various legal precedents, there is no enough evidence to challenge the current polling system, especially the introduction of VVPATs. Then, In Subramaniam Swamy versus Election Commission of India 2013 case, the court affirmed the necessity of a paper trail in order to ensure fair elections, which actually necessitated the introduction of the VVPATs. Later, in 2019, in Chandrababu Naidu case, when addressing a petition for 50% cross-verification of EVM votes with VVPAT slips in each assembly constituency, the court supported increasing the number of polling stations conducting this VVPAT verification from 1 per assembly to 5. Okay. Then neutrality of EVM microcontrollers. Here, the Supreme Court noted that the microcontrollers programmed separately by the EVM manufacturers are actually neutral, recording only the buttons pressed by the voters without favoring any one particular party. And the court also highlighted that any kind of unauthorized attempts to access the EVM's microcontroller or memory, this actually activates the UADM, which is nothing but the unauthorized access detection mechanism, which permanently disables the EVM. Okay. Next one is security measures in the EVM. The court underscored the security measures in place, noting that the program actually installed is very, very secure and they burnt into a one-time programmable microcontroller chip during manufacturing, preventing any kind of possibility for tampering. Additionally, all the 3 EVMs, that is the ballot unit, the control unit as well as the VVPAT, have microcontrollers with the firmware that cannot be altered after being delivered to the Election Commission of India by the manufacturer. And also, what are the directions that have been actually issued by the court to the Election Commission of India in order to enhance the efficiency of conducting free and fair elections is that the court issued 2 directions and few suggestions to the ECI with the deployment of VVPATs and the EVMs. First direction is, the court gave the directions to the ECI to seal and store the symbol loading units, that is the SLUs, for 45 days after declaration of results. And SLUs are nothing but these are memory units that are first connected to a computer. So these are very technical. So you just have to understand that the court gave certain directions. Okay. The next one is the SC has enabled the candidates in order to seek verification of the EVMs. And moving on, the burnt memory in the EVM microcontroller must be checked by a group or a team of engineers after the results are declared. If the candidates placed second and third in the election make such a request within 7 days of declaration of results. So this is an important criteria. And the expenses for this verification will have to be borne by the candidate and which would be refunded in the case if the EVM is found to be tampered. And also suggestion on VVPAT is that the Supreme Court said that the ECI may examine the suggestion that VVPAT slips can be counted using a counting machine rather than by humans because it is actually prone to errors. And also VVPAT slips could have a barcode which is printed on them, making it easier for the machine counting. The next article that we'll be discussing about is Engaging China in Modi 3.0. So in this particular article, as the government has actually resumed its 3rd term, it is important to understand what is India's strategic engagement or engagement strategy with respect to that of China. So moving forward, here we'll be discussing about India-China ties, and this is actually important part of India and its neighborhood, and we can map this particular topic to GS paper 2 for the mains examination, specifically under India and its neighborhood relations and effect of policies of developing countries on India's interests. So moving forward, there has been a previous year question in the year 2017 with respect to that of China in using its economic relations and positive trade surplus as a potential military power status in Asia. So any kind of relationship that India actually shares with that of its immediate neighbor, its extended neighbor, and the bilateral relations India shares with other countries like the US, Russia, etc. are very, very important specifically for your mains examination. Now moving forward, let us get to understand what this particular article is discussing about. Okay. So, as the Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, begins his 3rd term as the Prime Minister, India's engagement strategy with respect to China is under scrutiny, especially with the upcoming SCO summit in Astana, where the Indian Prime Minister would probably meet the Chinese counterpart. Moving forward, let us understand what have been the recent development in India-China ties. Okay, the first one is the diplomatic signaling. So, in a recent interview, we could have heard, the Prime Minister, that is Indian Prime Minister, had actually emphasized the urgency of addressing the border issues with China in order to normalize the bilateral relations. As we know that there has been, severe border issues along the LAC, that is line of actual control. So to this, China had responded positively, stating the relationship is about more than the boundary situation. So this is actually a positive signal that we have actually received from China. The next point is nuanced position on border issues. So recently, if you see, the External Affairs Minister had expressed hope for resolving the border disputes through the patrolling rights as well as the patrolling abilities, where you see the relationship between India and China has always hovered with, terms like disengagement as well as de-escalation. But now we are discussing about the patrolling rights, etc. Next one, if you see the economic engagement, despite the political tensions that actually happened between both the countries, the bilateral trade had actually reached a record of around $136 billion in the year 2023. And this actually indicates the continued economic interdependence between the two nations even as the security concerns persist. However, apart from the recent developments, it is actually important for us to understand the current challenges and complicating factors in India-China ties. The first one is, as we know, it is unresolved border dispute. That is the standoff that began with the Galwan clashes that actually dates back to 2020, which remains unresolved. And approximately, if you see, as of date, 50,000 to 60,000 troops actually remain deployed on each side of the border, maintaining a very, very tense situation. Moving forward, economic decoupling efforts. So India has been actively working in order to reduce the dependence on China with respect to that of, if you see, the anti-dumping duties that is actually imposed, etc. And this effort, while aimed at enhancing India's security and self-reliance, complicates the economic relationship. And also regarding the autonomy of Taiwan, here comes the Taiwan issue. Here, PM Modi's public interaction with Taiwan's president on social media is also, it has angered China to some extent. Here, it is actually important to understand the Tibet factor, okay? So, the Tibet issue is rooted in China's 1950 annexation of Tibet. That has actually led to decade-long disputes over the autonomy of this particular region with respect to the human right abuses as well. If you see, Dalai Lama, who has been the Tibet spiritual leader, had actually fled to India in 1959 following a failed uprising, establishing a government in exile in Dharamshala. And the presence of him in India and his global advocacy for the autonomy of this particular Tibetan region exacerbate further tensions between India as well as China, as well as countries that actually engage with him. Now, listening to this, we will actually have to understand the Tibet factor. Here, a US congressional delegation's meeting with Dalai Lama in Dharamshala in June 2024, followed by meetings with the Indian leaders, actually drew sharp reactions from that of China. And this also underscores the ongoing sensitivity of the Tibet issue in the bilateral relations. Moving on, balancing act with other powers. Here, India is actually strengthening its ties with the nations like the United States, and there are also active participation of India where you can see in regional groupings like the Quad, etc. And its association with respect to Australia as well as Japan has actually incited anger in the Chinese nation. And what is the way forward in order to handle or tackle the situation is that the first one is there has to be focused border negotiation. Here, continued targeted discussions on specific issues like the patrolling rights has highlighted by the External Affairs Minister. The next one, you need to aim for incremental progress rather than seeking comprehensive resolution in one go. Okay, so progressively negotiations actually have to take place. The next one is economic leveraging. This is nothing but you need to use the strong bilateral trade as a positive factor in negotiations and gradually work towards a more balanced trade relationship in order to address India's concerns about the existing trade deficit. Also, multilateral engagement. We need to often use platforms like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, BRICS and G20, where China is also a part, for constructive dialogue with China. And these forums provide opportunities for the engagement without the pressure of any kind of bilateral negotiations. And moving forward, the next way forward is strengthening the domestic capabilities. This is nothing but continue the efforts in order to enhance border infrastructure as well as military preparedness along the border. And this approach of competitive coexistence can provide India with better negotiating leverage. And the final one is realistic engagement model. This is nothing but you need to consider adopting elements of the Australian approach, which is nothing but it involves high-level engagements while firmly protecting the core national interest. So this model actually allows for pragmatic dialogue without compromising on the key issues as well as protecting the sovereignty and security of your nation. The next article that we'll be discussing about is HOOCH. So this particular article has actually appeared in the backdrop of the recent number of significant deaths that has actually taken place in one of the municipalities in Tamil Nadu. That is named as Kallakurichi, and that is because people had consumed a spurious or a very, very toxic liquor, which is also named as HOOCH. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about what is this particular HOOCH and what are the effects of methanol poisoning and what are the methods of producing this particular liquor by the process of fermentation and distillation. And this entire topic can be mapped to the topic of science and technology for the prelims examination. So moving forward, if you look at the previous year question, there was a question that has been asked in the preliminary examination 2021 in the engineering services about HOOCH as well as a bootlegging. That actually refers to which of the following. So these kind of terms are very, very important, and what they are associated with is very, very important. So moving on, let us understand what this particular article is discussing about. Okay. So a significant number of people have died and many others have been hospitalized after consuming HOOCH or spurious liquor in Kallakurichi municipality of Tamil Nadu. However, this is actually not the first case that is taking place in Tamil Nadu. Already there was a case in 2021 in Bihar where several people had actually consumed this particular liquor and they actually succumbed to death. Next one is what is HOOCH? Okay, so HOOCH is actually a commonly used term for poor quality alcohol, and this term is actually derived from Hoochinu, who are nothing but a native Alaskan tribe that was known to produce very, very strong liquor. And unlike branded liquor, which is actually produced in factories with very, sophisticated equipments as well as technology and rigorous quality control, HOOCH is actually made in much more crude settings. And to put it very, very simply, HOOCH is the alcohol which is meant to intoxicate, but if it is prepared incorrectly, it can actually kill. Moving forward, let us understand the methods which are actually involved in the production of HOOCH. So here there are two methods, that is, one is fermentation and the next one will be distillation. So let us understand fermentation. So when heated, yeast actually reacts with sugar. What is yeast? This is actually a normal leavening agent which is used. What is a leavening agent? This is actually used in dough when you prepare, the bread for pizza and all these things, right? So that is what it is. When heated, the yeast actually reacts with sugar, that is actually from the grain, the fruits as well as the sugarcane, whatever raw materials or the inputs that are used in order to ferment and to produce a mixture containing alcohol. And this is an age-old process which is used to create beverages like beer or wine. Moving forward, but it actually comes with a basic limitation. See, as fermentation continues and alcohol levels actually rise, conditions in the mixture become very, very toxic for the yeast, and beyond that point, fermentation actually stops. So eventually, no more fermentation will actually take place. Thus, in order to make anything stronger, above 14 to 18% of this alcohol, that is alcohol by volume, which is a standard measure used for measuring the amount of alcohol which is present, the beverages need to be distilled. So alcohol by volume, ABV, is a standard measure which is used worldwide to quantify the amount of alcohol, that is ethanol, which is present in an alcoholic beverage. Okay. The next process is this process of distillation. So this is a process of physically separating the alcohol from a fermented mixture using evaporation as well as condensation. So there is constant heating, and as a result of which evaporation and condensation takes place. So since different parts of the mixture, see, some of it actually has sugar, then some of it has fruit remains, etc. So different parts of the mixture have different boiling points, and heating it up to the correct temperature makes it possible to separate only the alcohol from the water and other remnants. Next one is distilled beverages or spirits are far more potent than any kind of fermented beverage. So HOOCH similarly is produced using distillation of a fermented mixture, generally of locally available yeast and sugar or the fruit. Often the waste of the fruit, not even the proper consumable fruit, is actually used here. But The setup used for the process is very, very rudimentary. That is what? It is just very, very crude. It is not sophisticated. It just has a big vat, like a vessel-like kind, where the mixture is boiled and a pipe that actually captures and carries the alcoholic fumes, and another pot where the concentrated alcohol condenses. Moving forward, so this is actually continued. So multiple rounds of distillation are carried out in order to produce more potent alcohol, or the end product which actually has higher concentration of alcohol, which will actually ignite that kick in the body. So moving forward, how is this particular hooch is dangerous? First is, I told you, it is a very, very crude method of production. Okay. So that is the fermented mixture which is distilled contains more than just consumable alcohol. So apart from ethanol, it actually contains industrial alcohol, that is methanol, which is very, very toxic for your human body. Next one, there is incorrect or incomplete distillation that is actually taking place. Here, non-distilled alcoholic beverages like wine, they contain relatively harmless trace amounts of methanol. But during the distillation process, if you see, both ethanol and methanol are concentrated. So thus, if done incorrectly, that is distillation can actually lead to an end product which contains high quantities of toxic methanol. Moving forward, not sufficient checks are actually done. So here if you see, methanol actually has a boiling point of around 64.7 degrees, which is lower than that of ethanol, that is 78.37. And during distillation, when the mixture reaches this 64, the pot collecting concentrated alcohol begins to fill up, and it actually has a very highly concentrated toxic chemical. This must actually be discarded for the end product to be safe. Further, it is crucial to maintain a temperature of above 78.3 because that is actually of the ethanol, right? But it has to be well below 100 degree, that is the boiling point of water, in order to obtain safe to consume yet potent liquor. But commercial distillers, if you see, they have sophisticated equipment in order to deal with this distillation process, and multiple checks are done in order to maintain the accuracy of the process. However, if you see, hooch makers have no temperature control. This means that the process of distillation lacks the accuracy that is crucial for producing the optimum level of alcohol level. Moving on, what are the risks associated, with respect to that of hooch with respect to the human body is that the adulterants that are actually used over there, like the organic waste, battery acid and industry grade methanol, are highly toxic, producing effects such as they actually cause blackouts, memory loss, as well as high drunkenness even on the consumption of low quantities of liquor. Also, in higher or in extreme cases, it is actually very toxic and deadly. And also, if you see, methanol or methyl alcohol can cause impaired vision, high toxicity and metabolic acidosis, a condition in which the body produces excessive acid that cannot be flushed out or filtered, as urine by the kidneys. Moving forward, what are the treatment methods that can be used here? The first one, the treatment for this is to intravenously administer fompizole as well as ethanol. However, this fompizole can actually be very, very expensive and can be unavailable in many parts of India. And in such cases, doctors usually administer a mixture of ethanol and water in the ratio of 1:1. And ethanol actually has the capacity or characteristic feature of inhibiting the methanol's conversion into toxins, and it helps in flushing it out of the body either naturally or through the process of dialysis. The next article that we'll be discussing about is sickle cell patients need urgent access to modern medication. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about how this particular sickle cell disease actually poses a formidable challenge to the global health landscape, and specifically if you see with respect to that of India, it has affected significantly the tribal population when compared to the rest of the population. So our takeaway for the prelims examination is to discuss about this particular sickle cell disease, what are the causes, the symptoms, as well as the treatment and the global initiatives. Okay. So moving forward, let us actually discuss about the sickle cell disease, where it actually forms a part of health and the diseases, and we can map this particular topic to science and the prelims examination, and for the mains examination under GS paper 3, science and technology, developments and their applications and effects in everyday life. So moving forward, there has been a previous year question in the year 2017 on this Zika virus. So any kind of virus and the transmission methods for a particular disease are very, very important, specifically for your prelims examination. So moving forward, let us understand what this particular article is discussing about. So sickle cell disease remains a formidable challenge in the landscape of global health, particularly in countries like India, where the burden is actually significant, particularly among the tribal population, as we discussed. Now let us understand what this particular sickle cell disease is all about. So, the sickle cell disease is also known as the sickle cell anemia, is actually a genetic disorder. This is very, very important, that affects the hemoglobin. That is, the hemoglobin, which is usually disc shaped, actually becomes crescent shaped so that it will not be able to smoothly navigate through the blood vessels. Okay, so we'll look at that. So hemoglobin is nothing but a protein in the red blood cells that carries oxygen through the body. So normally the red blood cells are disc shaped and are flexible enough in order to move easily through the blood vessels, whereas in case of sickle cell disease, the red blood cells are crescent or sickle shaped. Okay, those which are like this actually become crescent shaped like this, and these cells do not bend or move easily and can block the blood flow to the rest of the body. Now moving forward, here if you actually see in this particular diagram, you can see that this is the normal red blood cells where it is actually disc shaped over here. And here if you see the cross section, here you have the normal hemoglobin, whereas RBC flows freely within the blood vessels. Whereas abnormal sickle red blood cells, if you see in case of sickle cell disease, here it is actually crescent shaped and there is sticky sickle cells. Okay, so this actually disrupts the smooth flowing of the RBCs in the blood vessels. Now moving forward, let us actually look at the types. Here sickle cell disease exists in two forms within the human body. One is the sickle cell trait, in which the individual does not exhibit any kind of symptoms of this particular disease and actually leads a very, very normal life. Whereas if you see, the second form is characterized by the presence of symptoms related to the sickle cell disease. Next is, what are the causes? The cause of this particular disease is a defective gene called as a sickle cell gene. And a person actually is born with the sickle cell disease only when he actually inherits two genes, one from the mother and the other from the father, who are both affected by this particular disease. If you see the symptoms, early stage, you actually have extreme fatigue as well as fussiness from anemia, and also painfully swollen hands as well as feet as well as jaundice. And in the later stage, there is actually severe pain, anemia, organ damage as well as infection. So what is the associated treatment for the same? The only cure is bone marrow or the stem cell transplantation. However, there are treatments that can help in order to relieve the symptoms. You can't say that it is completely curable, and lessen the complications as well as to prolong the life. And also, let's actually understand about the prevalence of sickle cell disease in India. So, India actually has the second highest disease burden of sickle cell disease globally after the African countries. And if you see, and as estimated, 30,000 to 40,000 children in India are born with this particular disease every year, and 1 in 86 births among the STs, that is the scheduled tribe population, are affected with higher rates specifically in central, western and southern India. So what are the government initiatives associated with the same? The first one is National Sickle Cell Anemia Elimination Mission, which is a part of the National Health Mission that actually aims to eliminate this disease by 2047. And also, if you see, the technical operation guidelines were launched for the prevention and control of hemoglobinopathies in 2016, including sickle cell anemia. The next article that we'll be discussing about is Mirae Asset MF unveils Nifty EV as well as new age automotive ETF. So the takeaway from this particular article is the exchange traded fund and the questions of which can be asked even in your prelims examination. So here we'll be discussing about exchange traded funds, and this particular topic can be mapped to GS paper 3 prelims, effects of liberalization on the economy. Now, if you see, there has been a previous year question asked in the year 2014 in the prelims examination with respect to that of venture capital. Okay, so these kind of concepts, that is economic concepts and what impact does it actually have on the economy, is very, very important specifically for your prelims examination. So moving forward, let us actually understand what this particular article is discussing about. So Mirae Asset Investment Managers India Limited has actually introduced India's first exchange traded fund focused on electric vehicles and new age automotive segment. And here what is important is for us to understand what is this exchange traded fund or the ETF. Okay, so this is nothing but it is a collection of marketable securities. What do you mean by marketable securities? Which are easily traded in the market, that tracks an underlying index. Okay. So if you see this particular, infographic over here, so exchange traded funds is equal to, it is mutual fund side, that is, it brings diversification or exposure to the basket of assets that is present. And on the other equity side, if you see, it brings simplicity with which they are exchanged or traded. Okay. So moving forward, let us actually understand the features and how they are different from that of the mutual funds. So here, the exchange traded funds will let you invest in a large number of diverse kinds of securities at once. And these baskets of securities or the ETFs are a kind of investment fund that actually combines the best features of two popular assets that we actually saw, mutual funds and one on the equity side. The next one, how is it actually different from that of mutual funds and equity, is that number one is ease of trade. So, ETF share prices fluctuate throughout the day as they are traded, that is bought and sold, unlike mutual funds which only trade once daily after the market closes. Next one, in terms of affordability, ETFs offer low expense ratios and fewer broker commissions than buying the stocks individually. And in terms of diversification, they are diversified unlike stocks, thereby hedging the investor from the market volatility. The next one, what are the types of ETFs? There are different types. Equity ETFs that track the equity indices, the debt ETFs that invest in government and corporate bonds, the commodity ETFs that invest in commodities like gold and silver, the sectoral or thematic ETFs that focus on the specific industries or themes. The next one is international ETFs that actually track the foreign indices. Moving forward, it is important for us to understand what is the difference between the open-ended funds and closed-ended funds. Okay, so here investment funds are differentiated as two types based on the investment structure, that is the flexibility and the ease with which they can be bought and sold in the market. So here open-ended funds is they can actually be bought and sold anytime. Closed, actually they can be bought generally only at their launch and redeemed when the fund investment tenure has completely ended. Next one, they generally give lower returns than the close-ended funds, and here if you see the closed ones, they generally give higher returns. Here it is important to note that the mutual funds and ETFs are preferably open-ended, but not necessarily they are open-ended. Okay. Here it is important to note that mutual funds and ETFs are preferably open-ended, but not necessarily. That is what we actually discussed here. Now let us solve few prelims as well as a mains practice question. The first question reads, consider the following statement. Sickle cell disease is an acute non-inherited. No, since it's inherited, this statement is actually wrong. Anemia is one of the symptoms of the SCD. Yes, this is correct. India has the highest global prevalence. No, this is also wrong. It is actually the second highest. So which of the statements given above are correct? Since only statement 2 is actually correct, the answer will be option B. Moving on. The second question reads, with reference to that of ETF, that is the exchange traded funds, which was in news recently, which of the following are correct? It is a collection of marketable securities easily traded on the market that tracks an underlying index. Yes, this is correct. ETF, like mutual funds, are traded once in a day, giving it a feature of stability. No, this is wrong. However, ETFs are more expensive than mutual funds and stocks because of high broker commission. This is also wrong, since 2 and 3 are actually wrong. The answer will be only statement number 1, so A is the answer. The third question reads, with reference to the electronic voting machines, consider the following statement. The use of EVMs in Indian elections was permitted through a constitutional amendment. No, this is wrong. EVMs require an active electricity connection to run. No, this is also wrong. The control unit in the EVM can store the result in its memory for 10 years and even more. This is actually correct. And which of the above statements are not correct? Since 1 and 2 are not correct, the answer will be option A. So moving on, the fourth question, which among the following countries is not a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, that is the SCO? Kazakhstan, yes, it's a member. Kyrgyzstan, yes. Uzbekistan, yes. And Turkmenistan, no. So the answer is very direct, it's option D. Moving forward, the fifth question reads, the recent deaths of several people due to the consumption of HOOCH or the spurious liquor in Tamil Nadu are mainly attributed to the poisoning caused by ethanol contamination. No, wrong. Methanol contamination, yes, it is right. So ethylene glycol and lead poisoning ultimately become wrong. So the direct answer will be option B. Moving forward, mains practice question actually reads, elucidate the factors responsible for the complexities in India-China ties and suggest measures for the strategic balancing between the two powers. Here, the approach to this particular question is divided into the introduction, body, and the conclusion. So here, if you see, in the introduction, where we'll be briefly introduce the multidimensional relationship that India and China share. And moving on to the body, we will be discussing about the factors contributing to the complexities like the border disputes, the economic tensions, the political issues, as well as the global alignments, etc. Next, we'll discuss about the measures for strategic balancing like diplomatic negotiations, any kind of economic strategy, multilateral engagement, military preparedness, and balance strategy. And in the conclusion, we will summarize by stressing the need for a nuanced and multifaceted strategy that ensures India's national security and promotes stable relations with China, contributing to regional peace as well as development. With this, we've actually come to the end of our daily news analysis discussion. For regular updates, please do like, share, and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. Thank you.